Thanks everybody for joining us today for our webinar on how tribes can participate in the California Tribal Gap Analysis Project. We'll get started with a welcome and introductions, and I'll let Tom kick it off.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tom Gates. I'm the Tribal Liaison at the California Energy Commission. Happy to kick off this webinar. This has been a long time coming. This originally was an idea that went back years ago at one of the Tribal Energy Summits that the Energy Commission held, and out of that summit came a recommendation to do such a study. And I think that as you all listen through this webinar, we hope you find that it's worth your time as tribal representatives to participate in this study. This study, I think, is going to have a huge impact on how state of California thinks about its priorities for technical assistance and funding for tribes in the sectors of energy, climate change, and how those two sectors definitely overlap. So thanks again, welcome, and back to you, Josh.
Thanks, Rick. I'll pass it over to Coral, I believe, who will introduce both herself and Leah, who wasn't able to make it.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today and taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm Coral Abbott, Senior Program Analyst at the California Strategic Growth Council. The other SGC colleague that I have, Leah Fisher, who's a part of this overall project team, couldn't make it today. But SGC, kind of echoing what Tom said, is really looking forward to the outcomes of this effort and working with you all through this effort, both so that we can improve the state's offerings of grant programs and technical assistance in terms of what's available and accessible to tribes, trying to work through barriers, as well as a way to help to develop and strengthen relationships and partnerships for current state tribal efforts now and into the future. So thank you again, and looking forward to working with you all through this effort. I'll pass it back to Josh.
Great, thanks, Coral. And I'm Josh Simmons with Prosper Sustainably, and excited to be here today, excited to be this far along with this project, and appreciative of the opportunity provided by the California Energy Commission and Strategic Growth Council to identify and seek to address the clean energy and climate change needs identified by tribes through the project and the analysis. I am president with Prosper Sustainably. I have been working with tribes, I guess, since 1999 in broadly the areas of environmental sustainability, clean energy, and climate change. And I'm working with various tribes throughout the state on various clean energy and climate change projects, and kind of I'm the primary lead on this project right here. So I'll pass it over to Angie.
Hi everybody, I'm Angie Hacker. I work with Josh at Prosper Sustainably. We work with tribes all over the country, as well as other communities, and I have been working with communities in the areas of sustainability, climate change, and energy for over 20 years. I also play the role of statewide best practices coordinator for something called the California Climate and Energy Collaborative. And for this project, I am helping to develop and administer the project alongside Josh, including this questionnaire, and I really hope I'll meet some of you in the process of administering the questionnaire. I love to play the role of trying to really work with communities to understand their needs. So we are excited to learn more from you throughout this process about your clean energy and your climate change resilience needs. And I also love to figure out how to address those needs in a systematic and scalable way. And so we cannot get that right without you. And we're happy you're here, and we're happy, really happy if you decide to participate in this project with us.
Thanks, Angie. And I'll also add that I didn't add before. So, prior to founding Prosper Sustainably, I was the environmental director for the San Ynez Chumash. Did that for about 7 years, and that's where I met Shasta, Liz, Rick, and others that are a part of this group. So I'll pass it over to Shasta.
Thanks, Josh. My name is Shasta Gaughan, and in my day job, I work as the Environmental Director and Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Paula Band of Mission Indians. I've worked with tribal communities and tribal nations for 16 years, and I am serving in this project as an independent consultant, and hope to be able to work with a lot of you one-on-one to help get this project moving forward. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Shasta. And you'll see I'm making edits to titles and things as we throughout. I'll pass it over to Liz.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction there of everyone. This is an amazing team. And just a little bit about myself. I'm from Norfolk Rancheria, Mono Indians, located right outside of Yosemite here in California, and also a Navy veteran. I've had GC Green for about 11 years, which is a general contracting and consulting firm. And being Native American and a lot of my passion and my role here too, is just a lot of my life experience growing up and really having that passion to, how would you say, enabling our tribe, empowering our tribe and tribal members to become more resilient. And that resiliency means a lot of things to me. Part of that is energy resiliency, climate resiliency, economic, and it's been a large part of my passion and why I started GC Green 11 years ago. And really just connecting the dots between clean energy, also diversity, inclusion, and part of that large focus of that is, of course, tribes, and not just here in California, but also nationally. And I really look forward to being, again, a part of this project. And this is something historic, and I'm just really proud to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. And Rick, we didn't check if you're, and we're really, you or somebody else I met when I was back working with the Chumash. I'm really excited to have you as part of the team and as part of this project. Rick, there you are. Hopefully your audio works as well. Oh, can't hear you, Rick.
How's that? Is that better?
Good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Good morning. Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of GC Green, and I've been pleased to be a part of this program. My main role is to support the entire team as we look through trying to address how to make the questionnaire as efficient as possible and thinking through some of the outreach. My role with GC Green is more directly involved with the projects, including tribal projects, and looking to help out and support the team any way I can.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rick. Lolly?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Lolly Lim. I'm a staff researcher and project manager at the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation. We're a small research center based in the School of Public Affairs at UCLA, and we focus mostly on environmental policy-oriented research, ranging from looking at clean water access issues to clean energy issues, climate adaptation issues focused on extreme heat. So on this project, we'll be supporting, have been supporting on the development of the draft questionnaire, and then after the questionnaire is fielded, on the analysis of those results. I think, yeah, I'm grateful to meet you all and be on the team.
And Lolly is also part of a team that includes J.R. DeShazo, and who's the director of the UCLA Luskin Center and a professor, I believe, in the engineering department. And we're, really been happy to have it, grateful to have his input, and particularly in so far in designing the questionnaire and the research study and analysis. And then Dustin.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, and hi, everyone. I'm Dustin Jolly, principal and founder at Our Energy. I've spent my 20-year or so career in the energy and water infrastructure space, and I've been really proud to and passionate about energy access issues and also energy independence and autonomy. And I was the utilities and tribal engineer for the Yurok tribe a number of years back, dating back almost 15 years now, and got some unique experience working with the Yurok tribe there, and have really been pleased to continue that work with a number of tribes around the United States and even outside the United States, including some of this work with Prosper Sustainably and the rest of the team here, really focusing more recently on distributed smart renewable energy systems, community microgrids, and commercial, industrial, and utility scale renewable energy projects. So my role here is really just as an advisor and helping out in a technical capacity wherever possible. So thanks for having me.
All right, thanks everybody. And so Shasta and Angie, maybe you can tell me whether or not this is the case. In GoToWebinar, can people like introduce themselves in the chat box, or are they not able to do chat to each other or the whole group?
You know, I'm not sure.
I think they can chat to everyone.
Okay, so yeah, I would encourage you all to introduce yourselves as well in the chat box if you can, and that'd be great. And then as we go throughout, you can chat, you can add questions, and also if you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you at certain points to be able to ask questions. We're actually going to have a point between different sections where between each of these sections, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions after each. And then hopefully, Angie and Shasta, you can help me in monitoring and administering those questions.
Just want to point out for folks, if you look at your function panel, you will see, you should see questions. So you can ask a question in writing there at any point in time.
All right, thanks, Angie. So today's agenda for this webinar will begin with an overview of the California Tribal Gap Analysis Project, where we'll focus on the background of how this came about and the scope of the project. We'll move on to goals, primary goals and key benefits. We'll walk through the major steps and timeline for the project and share a little bit more about the project team and their roles in the project. Then we'll move on to the tribal questionnaire for the project, which is really the primary purpose of the webinar today. We'll discuss the scope and structure of the questionnaire, how to complete the questionnaire, and some considerations for completing the questionnaire, how to register to participate in completing the questionnaire, what will occur once you complete the questionnaire, and discuss how we're going to try to share the information about the questionnaire and recruit participation from tribes throughout California. And then finally, we're going to share a little information on the upcoming California Tribal Resiliency Conference that's going to be held on May 19th and 20th, that hopefully you have received an email for or mail for invitation from the California Energy Commission. So the California Tribal Gap Analysis was really a need identified by the California Energy Commission several years ago, but really I think kind of first, started to come to fruition through the 2018 Tribal Energy Summits. So the findings and the voices heard at the Tribal Energy Summits from the tribes that participated really strongly identified, confirmed the need for this type of gap analysis to identify where these needs are, and obviously to move further into addressing those needs. Then an opportunity arose with some leftover American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds that the California Energy Commission had available to it to invest those funds into those needs identified previously and through the Energy Summit and through some subsequent tribal forums and communications spearheaded by the California Energy Commission, California Public Utilities Commission, and others. So that funding resulted in the Tribal Government Challenge Statewide Gap Analysis, which we've shortened to California Tribal Gap Analysis. And that same source of funding was also used to offer the Tribal Government Challenge grants. And so, I found myself, just interested about the name of Government Challenge. So that name comes from the original era guidelines for the state's use of the funding for a local government challenge program. So if you were wondering, like me, where the government challenge came from. So the gap analysis and the challenge grant ultimately resulted through a partnership between California Energy Commission with the Strategic Growth Council, which led to the inclusion of climate change, adaptation, and resilience within the scope of the project. So the scope, as I mentioned, does include, in addition to climate change, adaptation, and resilience, focuses on clean energy in a series of subtopics, including energy efficiency, renewable energy and energy storage, as well as clean transportation. And I want to heavily emphasize that this is a project, the analysis scope includes all California Native American tribes, including those without federal recognition and without landholding. So that's kind of been a common misconception. So all approximately 170, I believe there's about 109 federally recognized tribes in California, and then another 60 or so tribes without federal recognition. And land status does not, we want all tribes to participate regardless of that status or land status. The primary goals of this gap analysis are to identify the tribe's priorities, needs, and barriers in these areas of clean energy and climate change. And through identifying those needs and analyzing those needs, provide recommendation for future state programs to address those needs through funding, technical assistance, and other resources. So, those recommendations will be informed, primarily and mostly informed and shaped by the tribal input we received through the questionnaire, which is why we, the tribal questionnaire and tribes participation is so important. Another goal of the project is to advance collaboration and build relationships between the tribes and the state of California, starting with the Energy Commission and Strategic Growth Council, but hopefully other agencies as well. And, and want to emphasize again, this is for all California tribes, all approximately 170. So for tribes, the key benefits are really the opportunity to inform and shape future state clean energy and climate change programs that are addressing tribal needs in the areas of clean energy and climate change. So to be able to have some influence on the funding and other resources that is made available to tribes in the future. And also tribes will receive access to a database we are developing with available clean energy and climate change funding, resources, and other opportunities for California tribes that are available right now to address those needs. The key steps for this project and the timeline for these steps begins with and revolves really around the tribal questionnaire I've mentioned, and we'll get into the details of. We began preparing the draft. We prepared the draft of the tribal questionnaire last fall, and then we piloted it. We tested it out with, I believe, 8 or 9 tribes this past winter, and received feedback to then refine the questionnaire to its final form. At the same time, we began some secondary research beginning this past winter, which consists of identifying and obtaining secondary information and data sets. That includes the findings from the past conferences and forums and communications with tribes on these topics, as well as reaching out to tribal serving agencies and organizations to get more information on the programs that they have available or are contemplating to support tribes in these areas. And that's really the basis of that secondary research and our existing knowledge of those resources from just working with tribes is the foundation of that resources database that we'll be sharing. So we are now beginning to administer the tribal questionnaire, and we'll be doing so through the summer. And tribes that participate in the questionnaire and complete it will receive a copy of the responses, as well as the funding and resources database. And we will seek to follow up with participants for clarification on questionnaire responses as needed. With the responses, with the primary data, which is really the responses we receive, and that secondary information and data, we'll be conducting the data analysis beginning in the summer and through the fall, with the draft report being released for feedback to tribes for feedback by the winter of the upcoming winter, and then for the final report to be released by the spring of next year. So the diagram on the left just shows kind of the interrelationship of all the groups and how the information is flowing for this project. And in the upper right, you see California tribes, and that really is the primary source of information, the most important source. And you know, tribal voices really are going to be the foundation of the recommendations that we provide through this project. So just to reiterate, this contract is being administered by the California Strategic Growth Council, and so we've contracted directly with them, and it's being funded by the California Energy Commission, and both of those agencies make up the state committee that we're working closely with on this project. The lead contractor is Prosper Sustainably, and we are being supported by GC Green, Our Energy, and SCG Consulting, as well as the UCLA Luskin Center, who is going to be focusing on the research design and data analysis piece of the project. And we are just grateful to have such a great team to be able to support this project. And there are others that have been supporting us throughout, and will certainly share more information and want to give credit to those as we release the findings of this report as well. Okay, so before we move on to the questionnaire, I would like to stop and pause for questions. And then, so I believe there's some questions that have come in. And then if you want, you also could raise your hand. And again, Shasta and Angie, if you can help me in kind of monitoring both the questions and hands being raised. I guess we don't see any specific questions. So any questions from anybody at this time about the California Tribal Gap Analysis Project? And thank you, Daryl, for introducing yourself.
Josh, there are several people that introduced themselves over question because that was the way that they could introduce themselves. Chat wasn't working. So thank you all for introducing yourselves.
Okay, perfect. Oh, I see. All right. Okay, all right, so then I'll move on to the questionnaire, and then there'll be additional opportunities for questions throughout and at the end. So now we'll focus on how tribes can participate in the tribal questionnaire. So the scope and structure, we'll first focus on the scope and structure of the questionnaire, and it begins with a series of questions requesting general information about the tribal participant. And let me pull some of that up so you can see it. So actually, the very first thing you'll be asked, and I do want to provide the caveat that this is not the final version of it. There's still some a tiny bit of refinement going on, but this is close enough. But the very first question is just confirming consent to participate in the questionnaire in order to proceed with completing the questionnaire. And then it'll ask a series of questions, basic questions about the respondents, the tribe represented, roles, and location, federal recognition status, land characteristics, population characteristics, and information about the facilities that the tribe owns and or operates. Then the questionnaire moves really the primary purpose and bulk of the questionnaire is going to focus on the clean energy and climate change topics and subtopics. So then the questionnaire will first move on into clean energy priorities, activities, and needs. And this will also include a breakdown between the subtopics of energy efficiency, renewable energy, energy storage, and clean transportation. And I do want to point out that under clean energy and with each of these subtopics, there'll be a series of questions for energy efficiency that first focus on the residential sector, then move to the government sector, and then move to the commercial or business sector. And then there'll be a similar series of questions for renewable energy and energy storage, and then a similar series of questions for clean transportation. And there'll be general clean energy questions both before and after the subtopic specific and sector specific questions as well. And just to give you a little bit of a preview of those, so, kind of general clean energy goals, and then moving on into energy efficiency, where we ask about, priority, progress, and need for assistance, then moving on to government, the government sector, and then moving on to the commercial sector. And then there'll be some general questions on clean energy and seeking regarding needs, gaps, and recommendations. Then the questionnaire moves into climate change priorities, activities, and needs, focusing on climate change adaptation and climate change resilience. And certainly there is a significant overlap between clean energy and climate change as well. And then, so just to give you a preview on the climate change front, again, so all the sections start with a series of definitions, begin with general goals and priorities, and then there's a focus on climate change hazards and conditions. The tribe is experiencing impacts to important community assets. The priority, progress, and need for assistance with respect to climate change adaptation and resilience activities that the tribe is undertaking or seeking to undertake. And then a focus on breaking it down by health and social systems, natural managed systems, and built systems. And then finally, the questionnaire concludes with a series of questions focusing on general gaps and recommendations for tribal clean energy and climate change priorities, activities, and needs. And then I'll just pull those up quickly so you can get a sense of those. So it begins by asking tribes to rank their need for assistance among the subtopics, describing tribes' experience in utilizing federal, NGO, and state-funded assistance programs. And we say assistance programs, we mean funding programs, incentives, technical assistance, grants, and other related resources and opportunities, but I think primarily focused on grants and incentives, identifying any that are missing, seeking information on barriers prohibiting tribes from advancing their clean energy and climate change goals, asking for input on which types of assistances would be most beneficial for tribes moving forward, seeking information on topics that tribes may want to see studied by researchers in these areas, and then generally concerns or challenge in working with the state or accepting assistance, and if there are any unique challenges to tribes without land or federal recognition, and then finally just general ideas and recommendations. For the questionnaire itself, I want to go through a series of considerations and for completing the questionnaire. So the ideal participants are one or more authorized representatives from each tribe that can address all applicable topics and sectors. So I do want to reemphasize authorized representatives. So we are seeking those that are authorized by the tribal government to speak on behalf of the tribal government in these areas. And the topics already having been covered under clean energy and climate change and the respective subtopics of energy efficiency, renewable energy storage, clean transportation, adaptation, and resilience. So those topics in the sectors, in the residential sector, the government sector, and the business or commercial sector. And we've actually, I think, in the pilot phase, we found that the getting representatives speak to the business and commercial sector have been a little bit more difficult to get to participate in here, and it may be more challenging for tribes, and even from my own experience working both for tribal governments and with tribal governments, that can be the case. they're not as necessarily as connected to these types of efforts and assistance programs. So the potential participants, we are seeking our leaders, staff, and representatives from tribal council, administration, environmental, planning, housing, transportation, economic development, the cultural or tribal historic preservation office, emergency planning or mitigation related hazard mitigation planning, tribal businesses. So this is a representative list of but I actually would, if you have other recommendations, please share those through the chat or through the questions for other areas of representatives that we should ensure that we're doing outreach to, or at least including the outreach to ensure that tribes are aware of who we should be asking to participate in this. So only one questionnaire is to be completed per tribe. So we're not going to be sending a questionnaire that then is going to be separately completed by all the various representatives for the tribe. Those representatives will need to coordinate, and we'll talk about the options for completing the questionnaire in just a moment. The questionnaire platform we are using is SurveyMonkey, as you already may have noticed. A customized link is going to be created for each tribe so that that link can be used by various participants to complete a single response, which can be edited until the actual response is submitted. Those that choose to self-administer completion to complete the questionnaire on their own, and when it's going to involve 2 or more representatives of the tribe, are going to need to do some internal coordination, which we can certainly support to ensure that the multiple people can complete the single questionnaire. So as I mentioned, there are options for completing the questionnaire. There's 2 primary options for completing in SurveyMonkey. The first option and the recommended option is to complete a guided questionnaire where a contractor team member will be on a web conference or teleconference meeting with the tribe to guide them through the questionnaire. By taking this way, the tribe will receive guidance and clarification on the actual questionnaire itself, as well as any technical support for the SurveyMonkey questionnaire, as well as the whatever platform is being used to conduct the meeting, whether it's a web conference or a teleconference meeting as well. And we think that this is going to lead to the greatest success in completing the questionnaire and receiving any clarification. I do want to emphasize that those from our team, the contractor team that will be there supporting you, likely will be myself, Shasta, or Angie. Our role will be to provide clarification and guidance, but we're not going to be available to kind of introduce any new information or perspectives. We want to get unbiased perspectives from the participants as much as possible. So there's going to be that bit of a balance, and maybe that there are questions asked by us that we can't necessarily answer through the completion of the questionnaire, but perhaps can address later. So we will look to, for those that seek to participate in the questionnaire, the guided questionnaire, we're going to seek to schedule a 2-hour block with, myself, Shasta, or Angie, for a preferably web conference. But this could be a teleconference meeting. We do recognize that some tribes don't have broadband or may have limited broadband access, and we'll be able to coordinate the question in that manner as well. We're planning on sending a PDF copy of the questionnaire in advance so that you're aware of the questions and can prepare as necessary and identify the appropriate team community members that should be involved. For those that want to complete the questionnaire on their own, which we're calling the self-administered questionnaire, you'll receive once you register to complete it, which we'll describe in a moment, your options, you'll receive a customized link with instructions, and then you'll need to coordinate a single response among the participants from your tribe, which we can support in doing. The estimated time commitment is for completing the questionnaire is 1 to 2+ hours. And this was all based on the pilot phase that we did with those 8 or 9 tribes. We found that when it's a single participant, and some tribes, can have a single representative that does have the the knowledge and can speak to the tribe's perspectives in these areas, that it is, we found it can be done in half an hour, 45 minutes, or certainly under an hour, or at least that's what we found when there was a single participant in the pilot phase. When there are 2 or more participants, we have found it, usually at least an hour and a half, if not 2 hours or more. The pilot phase included some additional information, and we were asking for feedback on the questionnaire itself. So hopefully the actual final questionnaire in the process will be more streamlined and can stay within 2 hours and get closer to as 1 hour as possible for all tribes. So the time estimates do not include any prior internal, and I mean, internal to the tribe, any research conducted to prepare, and that's, if necessary, desired by the tribe. We're not requiring any pre-research or anything. Hi, Coral Scott. For completing the questionnaire. That would be, once you receive a copy, you can decide whether or not there needs to be any prior research. I do want to emphasize that 100% accuracy in your response is definitely not expected, and certainly I don't think it's even possible. The responses to these questions are going to be inherently subjective based on who's actually responding. So there are going to be multiple people within a tribal government that may have different, hopefully not significantly conflicting perspectives. The responses themselves are meant to be general indications of priorities, needs, and gaps. And the analysis is going to account for the subjectivity of the responses and the participants themselves. So, you don't need to worry about having the final answer, the 100% accurate, truly representative answer. We'll have to leave it up to you for your level of comfort, in your, the tribe's comfort in the responses that they allow to be submitted through this. But I also do want to emphasize that this is not an evaluation of tribal performance. The purpose is to identify gaps and needs and to communicate and provide recommendations to address those needs and gaps. We did find in the pilot that some respondents were a bit hesitant about somebody had raised the possibility of this being seen as an evaluation, although none of the pilot respondents actually did respond as if it was they felt like they were being evaluated. I did find that when there weren't certain representatives, say council or business leaders or representatives, that those participating in the pilot tended to kind of skew their responses, either trying to kind of underrepresent or overrepresent progress or priorities. And, I think what we want is just the best representation possible based on the information that you have at the time, without trying to inflate or deflate. A lack of progress isn't going to be necessarily a bad thing. A lack of progress actually is going to demonstrate a need in an area. And, overinflating performance actually is not necessarily going to support the allocation of resources to an actual gap or need or priority from tribes. After completing the questionnaire, tribes will receive a response, a copy of their responses to the questionnaire, and I also mentioned they'll receive a version, the latest version of the assistance programs database, which includes grants, incentives, technical assistance, and other resources available for tribes to address climate and clean energy needs and gaps already that are currently available. And this listing includes resource assistance programs from federal governments, California, local governments, investor-owned utilities, non-governmental organizations and nonprofits, and basically anything we could find that we could support tribes. So I'll pull up a quick copy of that right now so you can kind of see the work in progress and what we've done so far. So as I mentioned, we're doing research and working with various agencies and tribal serving agencies and organizations to obtain and flesh this out, and we'll continue to do so throughout the project. But our list so far is about, I guess 80 or so long, and I actually believe that list is going to grow. And we will also seek reach out for clarification with tribal respondents as needed. But the questionnaire itself is designed to minimize our need for follow-up clarification. So hopefully, we don't have to do that at all. But if we need clarification, we'll reach out. To register for the questionnaire, you have a few different options. You can go to the California Tribal Gap Analysis website, and a link to this form is on there. There's a Google Docs form in there right now. There'll be a form native to the site that'll be embedded in it soon enough. But this Google Docs form, and complete that to represent your interests, or you can just simply email me. And for all potential questionnaire participants, if you can provide names, email addresses, phone numbers, and titles and roles, that would be great. I understand that you may not fully understand or know who should participate, or who the tribe will want to participate in this, and you may not know until you see a copy of the questionnaire. Ideally, too, if you're going to seek a guided questionnaire, you could perhaps, and you have a good enough sense about who will be involved in completing the questionnaire, you could share 3 2-hour time blocks that work for all participants, starting at the earliest of next week through the end of June. As of right now, we may have some additional, we can push this out as needed, but we want to kind of complete some cycles of the questionnaire to see where we stand with the project and the analysis. But if you don't know what the availability is of potential participants, then that can also be coordinated later if you just register your initial interest. All right, so I want to stop here and offer another opportunity for questions. So again, feel free to type questions in the chat box or raise your hand. I do not see any in the chat box right now or any hands raised.
Josh, I see
one.
I see. Has there been any resistance to the term climate change? I have found the need to change the terminology to shifting climate or less politically charged descriptions to get any traction on climate programs.
That's a great question. I don't know how far I can go into answering that here. And my own personal perspective is, climate change preparedness and responsiveness is akin to emergency and disaster preparedness and responsiveness, and there's a lot of overlap between the two. So, to the extent that I find that there's a resistance, I tend to try to put it in terms of I guess less sensitive language and terminology, and I think really we're talking about the same concepts. But we are doing this project through as directed by the Strategic Growth Council and California Energy Commission, and ultimately it would be up to them regarding how we would phrase that. We won't be necessarily modifying the questionnaire to remove that or providing a version of the questionnaire without climate change. But perhaps that on an individual basis, what we can do is we can work with each tribe. If those matters are a concern, then we can talk about with each tribe what could be the strategy for still communicating this and getting responses to these questions in a way that's not going to lead the tribe not want to respond due to the use of the word climate change. I guess I'll also open up to Tom and Coral if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, this is Tom Gates, and I would say in response to that question, great question. I'm aware of what is behind that question and how that can get complicated in encouraging people to participate. My response, in addition to all that Josh says, is simply for government, particularly state government, to work, we got to keep it simple. If they're, and the state government recognizes those words, and if this document in the end is going to inform state government on how to adjust its funding, its technical assistance, we should recognize the words that we are already using. If we go off on other words that are more palatable to some, they may not have meaning to state government, and it may actually cause confusion. So I would recommend we keep the words generally as they are, because that's generally what state government recognizes. I would say if someone wants to get creative in other ways of characterizing the major crisis of our time, there are opportunities in the questionnaire to provide that, and that could possibly be something to add to the report. But again, I say keep it simple, help government figure out how to help tribes.
There's another question
Thanks,
here
Tom.
too. Unless, Coral, did you want to respond as well? Okay. There's another question here. How many questions are in the questionnaire? There are currently 39. Josh, do you want to confirm?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought 36, but I guess 36 to 39, give or take. I know some final refinement may lead to, I don't believe there would be any more than 39. I do want to point out, there is, within each question, there will be a series of responses for various kind of items, which you should have seen in the preview.
And there's
I see another question. Go ahead.
There's another question. Can respondents leave certain questions blank at the tribe's discretion, or does every question need a response?
So any question that's not starred, and I think there's only I think there's 3 or 4 questions, like, consent and then your name and tribe. I think the only ones that are absolutely mandatory. Questions can be left blank if they're not starred. So obviously, we would like tribes to take their best crack at providing a response. And as I mentioned, we're not looking for 100% accuracy, and this isn't an evaluation. But we do understand that in some cases, well, actually, in some cases there'll be some that aren't applicable. So there may be for certain tribes, certain sectors. Let's say the tribe doesn't have any businesses, so questions related to the business sector may not be applicable. And I think we provide guidance in the questionnaire where we say that you can just skip the question if it's not applicable as well.
There's another question. What is the total number of responses? And I'm going to go ahead and suggest that we would need a moment to count. But 39 questions, some of them do have multiple responses.
Oh, you mean, yeah, in terms of each of all these, there's a lot. We put it, that's why we did, I think the best indication of the level of effort is the pilot phase, where we did work through this with the nine tribes or so to get a sense of how much time, we did our best to put as much information, as much key information as possible without trying to go too far and make it as efficient as possible. So, and we, certainly appreciate the limited time and resources the tribes have to complete this questionnaire and their participation in this, despite all those competing demands on time.
So Josh, there's two more questions here. As states do not have jurisdiction over sovereign tribal governments, is there a requirement to waive sovereign immunity to receive any of the benefits of funding?
So I think that's probably a question to be asked for Tom. There's certainly no requirement, and wouldn't be anything regarding this questionnaire. But Tom, I obviously I have my own perspective, my own knowledge of this. But do you want to address?
Yeah, that's again a good question. It's an emerging question. It's probably one of the central questions in state funding tribes, and that tricky question of waiving sovereign immunity or providing a limited waiver. I think that's the answer is evolving. Currently, there are plenty of state grants that do require that. I can't speak for how that might change. I simply can say my own personal view is I hope that we overcome that issue in the future and get to a better place where funding is a bit more fluid between the state government and tribes. I can't say that happens now. I would recommend, if there are sections of the questionnaire where you can provide that type of input. For example, I think there's a place where it talks about challenges and barriers to working in this sector. That certainly could be one area to bring up. And I would probably assume if most tribes answered that, they would say that that is indeed one of the big barriers. That then is an outcome of the report, and that then informs state government on an area that if we want to be in good partnership, we need to work on and think harder about.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so I think to reiterate, this questionnaire, I think, is an opportunity to highlight those types of issues and to hopefully the recommendations and findings would result in hopefully steps and pathways to address tribal concerns regarding that and other major issues to working with states on these programs.
There's one more question as well. It says, please expand. Who sees these responses? Are responses filed for future access, review by state agencies or anyone affiliated with this project?
So first of all, I just want to say, we would encourage any sensitive information to not be included in, if it's sensitive information, we would encourage you not to include it in the questionnaire. At the same time, and I'll have to kind of defer maybe to Tom and Coral. The actual questionnaire responses aren't going to be attached to the report. So the report will be a summary of the findings, and we will identify specific tribes and specific participants to the extent that those tribes and participants have given permission for us to highlight their specific information or comments or recommendations. With respect to the survey responses themselves, I think, Coral and Tom, can you address exactly, what would be the access to those, future access?
Coral, if you go first, if you have anything to say, and then I can follow up, unless you have nothing to say to that.
I think that we should probably have a conversation just to make sure. I know there's requirements around public records for state agencies, so I don't want to speak out of turn and say, like, no, they won't be shared if we can't guarantee that. I agree with Josh that sensitive information should be left out. I think we'd prefer to use it also to help with any relationship building on your end that you'd like. For example, I think a lot of the questions center around specific programs or specific agencies' work. So I think on an as requested basis, we could share it, but wouldn't. I don't think it's our intention to just wholesale offer the results from the survey to any of our agency partners. But again, I think we need to go back and check and see with our legal counsel what can be requested as part of Public Records Act.
And I see a follow-up question. I think along the same lines, are these surveys subject to FOIA, I guess the state's version of FOIA, Federal, Freedom of Information Act? So are they subject to a state request or an information request to the state under state rules and regs? And I think, Coral, probably your answer is the same. We need to you probably need to check with legal counsel. You probably need to check the scope of the project too to see what extent the survey responses are part of the deliverables. I believe to the extent that they're, well, I don't want to speak too much, but I believe to the extent that they're handed over to the state, they may be, but.
There are exceptions, and so we can see whether, I think it is going to be a question for legal counsel about whether the results would come in. I think if there were sensitive information, that would possibly change it. But again, given that I don't have a legal background, I don't want to speak too soon.
Okay, and I really appreciate the questions we're receiving. I think even made the recommendation. The next question, is there a disclaimer on the survey that the potential for survey results could be released for state rules and regulations? And I think what we're going to do is research that to identify that specifically and include that language as appropriate that matches those findings. I don't see any additional questions, and I don't see any hands raised, so I will continue, and we have about 5 minutes left, but I think that's enough. Okay, so really the goal, one of our goals in administering this project or leading this project is to maximize participation among all approximately 170 California tribes to best inform future state clean energy and climate change investments and assistance programs such as grants, so on and so forth. Really, the more participation we have from tribes, the stronger the recommendations and findings of this report is going to be. So we really wanted to hear from as many tribes as possible. The methods with which we are reaching out or going to reach out are through periodic email blasts, and I guess also, we've sent out actual mail as well, presenting it at various tribal events, including the California Tribal Resiliency Conference, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. Sharing information with and through intertribal groups, such as the various tribal chairmen's associations will make requests to be able to share and distribute this information and present at their events, seek permission to do so. And we'll also be requesting participating tribes to recommend and hopefully even connect us with other tribes to participate and complete the questionnaire as well. So I guess if you have any other ideas or willing to provide support for this, then, please, reach out, please, share that in the chat or the questions. Hopefully you do as well want to see as many tribes participate as possible in this, and ultimately that this report reflects a strong collective tribal voice in addressing and moving forward, addressing these needs and priorities and gaps. So before we move on to the California Tribal Resiliency Conference, I think I saw one more question. Will the results of the questionnaire be used to shape future or ongoing funding? So the report itself is going to be made available to the state agencies that we hope will, that the purpose is to inform those future investments by the state through both existing and future programs. Certainly we can't guarantee. There's a variety of agencies that have a variety of different scopes in the areas of clean energy and climate change. But, this is being administered by the CEC coming down from the commission, and also by, Strategic Growth Council coming from their top level as well. And they are primary agencies administering programs in these areas. So certainly they're going to pay very close attention to it. CPUC and others are also very aware of this as well. So we hope to the maximum extent possible that this will, but can't make any guarantees. And some of that's also just subject to the availability of future state funding for these types of programs as well. And, there was, when, things like the pandemic obviously impact the level of funding available for any programs, let alone these. Tom, Coral, did I accurately represent that?
You did, and I would just simply add that while we cannot guarantee the future, we definitely think this report will inform the future and the partnership between the evolving partnership between the states and the tribe. And I know specifically that the governor's office and the resource agency and the state environmental protection agency all are well aware of this survey, all anticipate its outcome, and are all very eager to know what it says. And so I think with a high degree of probability, the answer is yes. I can't guarantee that 100%.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Coral, anything to add? Okay. So we've addressed all the questions and have kind of covered the California Tribal Gap Analysis portion. We're at our time right now. We'll spend a few more minutes talking about the California Tribal Resiliency Conference. I just also want to say social media was recommended, Facebook as another means to get the word out. And thank you for that recommendation, and we'll seek to use that as well. Just want to briefly share some information about the upcoming California Tribal Resiliency Conference being hosted by the California Energy Commission. So this is on May 19th and 20th. It is a remote conference. Registration information has been sent by the CEC by both mail and email. I want to emphasize it's for California tribes. It's by invitation only, but all California tribes and representatives from those tribes are automatically invited. I think the main point is that, consultants or organizations that are not participating on behalf of, directly on behalf of a California tribe, their registration participation would not be permitted. So the California Energy Commission is hosting it in coordination with the California Public Utilities Commission, Strategic Growth Council, and California Natural Resources Agency. The purpose of the conference is to inform California tribes about state and federal programs and other opportunities for increasing tribal energy resilience, which includes funding, incentives, technical assistance, and the California Tribal Gap Analysis Project. So we will have a presentation at this conference as well and be involved in other ways. Another purpose is to inform state and federal leaders about tribal perspectives, needs, and objectives in these areas, including the need for funding, technical assistance. We've already heard about sovereignty. So this is, a complementary opportunity for tribes to share their voice and perspective in these areas, to hopefully that will result in funneling additional resources to tribes through the state of California to address these needs. And finally, another purpose of the conference is to highlight resiliency projects supported by grant funding, and I believe it's primarily tribal resiliency projects supported by California grant funding, and I'm actually on a separate panel that'll be presenting a project that I'm working with Rincon on for long duration non-lithium ion energy storage and solar energy microgrid. So we look forward to your participation in that as well. And if you have not received the invitation, please let me know. I think Shasta, did you get the link in the chat box? Yeah, so Shasta put it in the chat box where you can get the registration link as well. And then the CEC will review and accept it so long as you're representing a California tribe. Tom, anything else to add?
No, that's excellent. Thanks, Josh.
Great. Then I give one more moment for questions on the conference or other questions. I'm looking for any hands raised if anybody wants to speak. And I don't see any. Shasta, Angie, you don't see any, right? Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to participate today. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website so that you can be shared with others, or you can go back and review it as well. And we're just really excited to start engaging tribes through this project on these important issues. And so thank you very much. Thanks everybody from the state and on our team for participating, and have a great day.